Have you ever wondered why some people seem to build wealth effortlessly while others work hard for decades and still struggle financially? What if I told you that the difference has almost nothing to do with intelligence, not education, not luck, not even how much money you make? In fact, one of the world's most respected financial experts believes that money is less about numbers and more about behavior, and the proof is his own incredible journey. Before Morgan Housel became one of the most influential voices in personal finance, he wasn't a billionaire hedge fund manager. He wasn't a Wall Street genius making million-dollar trades. He wasn't born into extraordinary wealth. Instead, he became famous for something far more powerful: understanding how ordinary people think about money. His writing started gaining attention because he could explain complicated financial concepts in a way that everyone could understand. Over time, millions of people began reading his articles, listening to his interviews, and following his advice. Then came the book that changed everything: The Psychology of Money, a book that sold millions of copies around the world and completely changed how people think about wealth. Not because it taught secret investment strategies, not because it promised overnight riches, but because it revealed something shocking. The biggest financial mistakes people make aren't mathematical mistakes, they're behavioral mistakes. Today, Morgan Housel is considered one of the most trusted financial thinkers on the planet. His ideas are studied by investors, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and everyday people who simply want to stop stressing about money. Some of these lessons are surprisingly simple. Others might challenge everything you've been taught about success, but together, they could change the way you think about money forever. So if you've ever felt stuck financially, if you've ever wondered why your paycheck disappears so quickly, or if you simply want more freedom in your life, stay with me until the end, because one idea in this video could end up being worth more than any investment you'll ever make. Let's begin with the biggest myth about money. Most people believe that becoming financially successful requires being smarter than everyone else. They think wealthy people possess some secret knowledge that ordinary people don't have. Maybe they understand complicated stock market charts. Maybe they're financial geniuses. Maybe they're just naturally gifted with money. Morgan Housel says that's not true. According to him, financial success has very little to do with intelligence. Think about that for a second. We've all met incredibly intelligent people who struggle with money. People with advanced degrees. People who excel academically. People who can solve complex problems. Yet somehow they still live paycheck to paycheck. At the same time, you've probably met people who aren't financial experts at all but somehow manage to steadily build wealth over time. Why? Because money is largely about behavior. It's about patience. It's about consistency. It's about controlling your emotions when everyone else is panicking. Imagine two people. One has a genius-level IQ but constantly spends more than they earn, makes emotional decisions, and chases every new financial trend. The other has average intelligence but consistently saves money, avoids unnecessary debt, and thinks long-term. Who wins? Over time, almost always the second person, because wealth isn't built through a few brilliant decisions. It's built through hundreds of small decisions repeated over many years. This is where many people go wrong. They spend years searching for the perfect investment, the perfect side hustle, the perfect business opportunity, the perfect strategy. Meanwhile, they ignore the simple behaviors that actually create wealth: saving consistently, living below their means, being patient, avoiding lifestyle inflation, keeping their expectations realistic. The truth is that money rewards endurance more than brilliance. The people who stay in the game the longest often win. And that brings us to the biggest reason people remain financially stuck. According to Morgan Housel, the number one thing keeping most people broke isn't a lack of opportunity. It isn't inflation. It isn't even low income. It's ignorance, but not the kind of ignorance most people think. He's not talking about not understanding complicated financial formulas. He's talking about being unaware of your own financial habits. Most people know exactly how many followers they have on social media. They know the latest celebrity news. They know what their favorite sports team is doing. But ask them how much money is currently in their bank account and they hesitate. Ask them how much they spent eating out last month. They don't know. Ask them where most of their money goes. They guess. And that's a huge problem, because you can't improve what you don't measure. Imagine trying to lose weight without ever stepping on a scale. Imagine trying to run a business without tracking revenue. Imagine trying to drive across the country without looking at a map. It would be almost impossible. Yet that's exactly how many people manage their money. They operate on assumptions. They spend based on feelings. They avoid looking at numbers because the truth makes them uncomfortable. Morgan argues that awareness is the foundation of financial success, not perfection. Awareness. You don't need to become obsessed with every penny. You don't need complicated spreadsheets, but you do need to know where your money is going, because every dollar you spend tells a story. It reveals your priorities. It reveals your habits. It reveals your future. And sometimes those stories surprise us. Many people say they value financial freedom, but their spending reveals something completely different. They spend heavily on impressing people they barely know. They buy things they don't truly need. They chase status instead of security, and they wonder why they never feel financially stable. Morgan encourages people to understand their personal money story. Where did your beliefs about money come from? Your parents, your friends, social media, society? Because often we're following financial rules we never consciously chose. We're simply copying what we see around us. And that's dangerous in a world where appearances can be incredibly misleading. The expensive car, the luxury watch, the giant giant house, the designer clothes. These things create an image of wealth, but image and reality are not always the same thing. In fact, the people who look rich are often very different from the people who are actually wealthy. And understanding that distinction may be one of the most important financial lessons you'll ever learn, because what Morgan Housel says next completely changes how we define success. And once you understand it, you'll never look at money the same way again. Most people spend their entire lives chasing the wrong financial target. They think they want to be rich, but what they actually want is something much deeper: freedom. Think about it. When people dream about having more money, they're usually not dreaming about the money itself. They're dreaming about what the money can do: the ability to wake up without stress, the ability to spend time with family, the ability to pursue meaningful work, the ability to say no to things they hate and yes to things they love. That's why Morgan Housel makes a powerful distinction between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is what people can see. Wealth is what they can't. A person driving a brand new luxury car might look rich. Someone living in a massive house might look rich. Someone wearing expensive designer clothing might look rich. But appearances can be deceiving, because wealth often hides. The truly wealthy person may be driving an ordinary vehicle, living in a modest home, wearing simple clothes, and quietly building assets that nobody notices. Why? Because wealth is not what you spend. Wealth is what you keep. Every dollar you don't spend becomes a tool that can create more freedom in the future. But every dollar spent solely to impress others disappears forever. This idea is incredibly important because modern society constantly pushes us toward visible success. Open social media and you'll see luxury vacations, exotic cars, expensive restaurants, huge houses, private jets, perfect lifestyles. And if you're not careful, you begin comparing your life to those highlights. You start believing that everyone else is winning, everyone else is richer, everyone else is ahead. But Morgan warns that social media often creates a dangerous illusion. You're comparing your everyday reality to someone else's carefully selected moments. You don't see their debt. You don't see their stress. You don't see their financial struggles. You only see the highlight reel. And chasing someone else's highlight reel can become one of the most expensive decisions you'll ever make, because comparison creates a trap. The moment you buy something to impress others, the satisfaction starts fading. The excitement lasts days, maybe weeks, sometimes months. Then it becomes normal, and suddenly you need something bigger, something newer, something better. The goalpost moves again and again and again. Morgan Housel calls this one of the hardest financial challenges in life: knowing when enough is enough. Think about how often this happens. Someone dreams of earning $50,000 a year. Eventually they achieve it. Then they want $100,000, then $200,000, then $500,000, then $1 million. The target never stops moving. The amount they thought would make them happy suddenly doesn't feel like enough anymore. Not because their life became worse, but because their expectations changed. And expectations are powerful. A person earning $50,000 who expects $40,000 may feel fortunate. A person earning $200,000 who expects $500,000 may feel frustrated. The difference isn't income, it's perspective. This is why gratitude plays such an important role in financial happiness. Gratitude isn't just a nice idea, it's a financial advantage, because gratitude helps you appreciate what you already have rather than constantly focusing on what you lack. And when you're grateful, you're less likely to make emotional spending decisions. You're less likely to chase status. You're less likely to fall into the endless cycle of wanting more. Now don't misunderstand this. Morgan isn't saying ambition is bad. He's not saying you shouldn't strive for success. He's saying success without limits can become dangerous, because if more is always the goal, you'll never arrive. You'll always feel behind. You'll always feel dissatisfied. You'll always be chasing something just beyond reach. The truly successful people often aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who know when they've reached enough, because enough creates peace. Enough creates confidence. Enough creates freedom. And freedom is the real goal. But once you understand what wealth truly means, another question appears. How do you actually build it? Fortunately, Morgan's answer is surprisingly simple. In fact, it's so simple that many people ignore it, because human beings are naturally attracted to complexity. We assume complicated solutions must be better. We assume experts have secret formulas. We assume wealth requires extraordinary strategies. Yet some of the most successful investors in history achieved their results by doing something almost boring. They stayed consistent. Morgan believes that one of the most powerful financial habits anyone can develop is treating savings as a necessity rather than an option. Most people save whatever is left over after spending. The problem? There's usually very little left over, because spending expands to fill available income. The more money you earn, the more opportunities appear to spend it. A nicer car, a bigger house, more subscriptions, more luxuries, more upgrades. Before long, higher income doesn't create wealth. It simply creates higher expenses. This is why Morgan recommends flipping the equation. Instead of spending first and saving later, save first and spend what's left. Pay yourself before anyone else gets paid. This idea sounds simple, but it changes everything. Imagine receiving your paycheck. Before touching the money, before paying for entertainment, before buying anything unnecessary, a percentage automatically moves into savings. Not because you're motivated, not because you're disciplined, not because you remembered, because the system did it automatically. This is where automation becomes incredibly powerful. Human beings are emotional. Some Some days we feel responsible. Some days we don't. Some days we're motivated. Some days we're tired. If your financial future depends entirely on daily willpower, you're making life unnecessarily difficult. Automation removes emotion from the process. It turns wealth building into a habit, a system, a routine. Morgan often references a simple principle: save at least 10% of every dollar you earn. For some people, that number may be higher. For others, it may start lower. The exact percentage matters less than developing the habit, because the habit is what creates momentum, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in finance. A small amount saved consistently can become surprisingly large over time, not because of magic, because of time. Time is the ingredient most people underestimate. We live in a culture obsessed with quick results, instant success, overnight millionaires, viral fame, fast money, but wealth usually grows slowly, almost invisibly, month after month, year after year. Then eventually the results become impossible to ignore. The challenge is that most people quit before they reach that point. They become impatient. They expect immediate rewards. They abandon the process. Meanwhile, the patient person keeps going, keeps saving, keeps investing, keeps allowing time to do the heavy lifting. And over decades, that patience can create extraordinary outcomes. This idea becomes even more powerful when we talk about investing, because according to Morgan Housel, most people make investing far more complicated than it needs to be. In fact, the strategy he recommends is so simple that many people initially dismiss it. Yet history shows it has created enormous wealth for millions of ordinary investors. And understanding this strategy could completely change the way you think about building financial freedom. So what is this investing strategy that Morgan Housel believes can outperform the vast majority of people's efforts? It isn't a secret stock. It isn't cryptocurrency. It isn't day trading. It isn't trying to predict the next big company before everyone else. In fact, that's exactly what makes it so powerful. Morgan's strategy is almost boring, and that's why it works. He advocates for investing in low-cost index funds. Now, at first glance, that might sound too simple. Many people hear the words index fund and immediately think there must be something more exciting out there, something faster, something that can generate bigger returns. But that's where many investors get into trouble, because investing isn't a game where the most exciting strategy wins. It's a game where the strategy you can stick with wins. Imagine two investors. The first investor spends hours every day analyzing stocks, watching financial news, and constantly buying and selling. The second investor simply invests consistently into a diversified index fund and leaves it alone. Most people assume the first investor will come out ahead. Yet history repeatedly shows that many professional investors struggle to beat the market over long periods of time. The market is incredibly difficult to predict. Nobody consistently knows what will happen next. Not economists, not analysts, not financial television personalities, not even billionaire investors. The future always contains surprises. And that's why Morgan focuses on a different goal. Instead of trying to beat the market every year, simply participate in the market for a very long time. Because time is often more important than timing. Let that sink in. Time in the market is usually more valuable than trying to perfectly time the market. Many people wait for the perfect moment to invest. They tell themselves they'll start when prices drop, or when the economy improves, or when things feel less uncertain. But uncertainty never disappears. There is always a reason to be afraid. There is always another headline predicting disaster. There is always another crisis. Yet despite countless recessions, crashes, wars, and economic fears, markets have historically continued growing over long periods of time. The investors who succeed are often not the smartest. They're simply the ones who remain invested. And this is where compound interest enters the picture. Albert Einstein supposedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he actually said it or not, the idea remains incredibly powerful. Imagine planting a single tree. At first, growth appears slow. You might barely notice any difference. But year after year, the tree grows larger. Its roots expand deeper. Its branches stretch wider. Eventually, growth accelerates. Money works the same way. The early stages often feel disappointing. The progress seems small. The results appear insignificant. But then something remarkable happens. Your money begins earning returns. Then those returns begin earning returns. And then those returns begin earning returns on their own returns. The snowball starts rolling downhill. And every year it becomes larger. This is why Morgan emphasizes patience so often. Because compound interest rewards those who can wait. Unfortunately, waiting is difficult. Human beings are wired for immediate gratification. We want results now. We want success now. We want wealth now. But the most powerful financial forces often require years to fully reveal themselves. Think about bamboo. For years after being planted, very little appears to happen above ground. Someone might assume it's not growing at all. But beneath the surface, an extensive root system is developing. Then suddenly, growth becomes dramatic. Financial success often follows a similar pattern. Years of invisible progress, then visible results. This is why consistency matters so much. Not because consistency is exciting, but because consistency allows compound growth to work its magic. And perhaps no one understands the power of persistence better than Mel Robbins herself. During the podcast, Mel shares a deeply personal story, a story that many people can relate to. There was a time when her family was drowning in debt. Not a small amount of debt. Not a temporary financial setback. They were approximately $800,000 in debt. that. Imagine the stress. Imagine the fear. Imagine waking up every morning wondering how you're going to fix such a massive problem. Most people would feel trapped. Most people would feel hopeless. Many would convince themselves that their situation could never improve. But Mel's story proves something important. Your current financial situation is not your permanent identity. Debt is not your identity. Financial mistakes are not your identity. Past decisions are not your identity. They're simply chapters in your story, and stories can change. The journey wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. There was no magical solution, no lottery ticket, no overnight breakthrough. Instead, there were better decisions, repeated consistently. Small improvements, repeated consistently. Financial discipline, repeated consistently. And over time, those decisions transformed the outcome. This is one of the most encouraging lessons from the entire conversation. You don't need to become someone else to improve your finances. You simply need to make slightly better decisions than you made yesterday. Because financial transformation rarely happens all at once. It happens one choice at a time. One saved dollar, one avoided impulse purchase, one investment contribution, 1 month of consistency, 1 year of patience. Eventually, those small actions become a completely different life. And perhaps that's the biggest message Morgan Housel wants people to understand. Money isn't really about money. It's about control over your time. It's about reducing stress. It's about creating options. It's about building a life where your decisions are guided by your values rather than your financial limitations. The ultimate goal isn't becoming the richest person in the room. The ultimate goal is having enough security to sleep peacefully, enough savings to handle emergencies, enough freedom to make choices you genuinely care about, enough confidence to stop comparing yourself to everyone else, enough independence to spend your life on your own terms. Because when you really think about it, that's what wealth has always been. Not yachts, not mansions, not luxury cars. Freedom. The freedom to decide how you spend your days. The freedom to pursue meaningful work. The freedom to prioritize family. The freedom to say no when something doesn't align with your values. The freedom to live life according to your own definition of success. And that kind of wealth is available to far more people than most realize. Not through secret formulas, not through extraordinary intelligence, not through luck, but through behavior. Patience over impulse, consistency over intensity, long-term thinking over short-term gratification, saving over showing off, gratitude over comparison, and perhaps most importantly, understanding when enough is enough. Because the people who constantly need more are often the ones who never feel rich, while the people who appreciate what they already have often feel wealthy long before they become wealthy on paper. So as you leave this video, ask yourself one simple question. Are your financial decisions bringing you closer to freedom or further away from it? Because every dollar you earn is more than money. It's a vote for the future you're creating. And the incredible thing is that future isn't determined by one massive decision. It's determined by hundreds of small choices made every single day. Start with one. Save a little more. Spend a little smarter. Think a little longer term. And keep going. Because years from now, you'll look back and realize that the life you wanted wasn't built in a single moment. It was built through simple habits repeated consistently. And that's the true psychology of money. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future videos about wealth, success, personal growth, and financial freedom. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.